Can you guys see me okay? Lord Almighty. Okay. I apologize about that. Alright. Sorry about that, guys. My OBS stream crashed. This is what happens when you use laptops. Computers can only do so much. Okay. So as I was saying, I'm just going to continue on. Hopefully this doesn't crash on me again. Okay. So one of the most important things here that we want to make sure to discuss is the fact of your guys' organizational skills. Organization is going to help you. It's the most important thing I could really recommend on you guys, because if you don't organize your guys' files, it is going to turn into a huge mess. So make sure to really do that. Also, the other thing is too is once with organization, if you're going to look over here on the right, you're going to see these tracks are color coded. This is also very quick to go in here and name your files something that you want to remember it by. So if you guys have, usually I design my tracks, as you can see, like the first starting tracks will be kick drums, hi-hats, tops, or what I call them. And then we do bass, and then leads, lead pads, and then something I usually describe music by. I usually, if I have a couple of different lead parts, I'll put, like this one's called love leads, because I love the lead. So dream arp, kind of a dreamy arpeggio kind of thing. Another big thing I'm going to get into is side chaining. This is a huge thing in dance music as well. And then vocals, and then we have robotic voices, and then more arpeggios, stabs, and other little mini things down here at the bottom, which kind of just add to the effect. So generally for most of my tracks, I usually start at the top, having most of the tracks that have the longest span, and then at the bottom I usually add my adders and fillers and things like that. So um, so yeah, I mean, it's music is one of those things that you know, it's a discovery process for a lot of people. You start out in it and you have no idea what you're doing, and then you keep doing it and you create a formula, and you continually keep mastering that art, and the next thing you know, you're teaching other people. So if anyone is ever in that boat where they feel like they can't keep going, just keep pushing. That's the number one thing I can always say, just keep pushing. um, your music is going to get better, and the beauty of you know hard work is that it's going to take a long time for it to pay off. It's music is just like anything, relationships, women, anything you put your mind to, you have to put in 100% of the effort to get this to come through. um, People think playing music and performing music is just all the glam and the outside, but it's not. It takes a lot of hard work, and doing this is the hard work. So what I'm going to show you guys today is getting down to it, in making sure that we have a very good format that you guys can follow, that's easy and simple, and you know, you guys can take, at least one person can take something away from this today. I'm happy with that. So all right, so moving on. I'm going to show you guys the master channel here, what I'm exactly doing. This is kind of foo-foo stuff. This is basically a dance master track I have on here. This is to bring out the lows and the highs and the mids. I'm going to cover this more once we get to the end of the track, but you're going to see a spectrum analyzer here. It's going to show you what's going on with the music on this side, and some of the plugins I'm going to jump into here in a second. So before we begin I'm going to play you guys this track all the way through. Do you guys have any questions yet, or any suggestions? Is everything coming out okay? All right. Looks like we're all set. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is play this track for you guys one time through. It is roughly about 7 minutes and 30 seconds long. This is a full extended mix track. So let me go ahead and mute this microphone and let's take a look. So, there we go. That is I believe that is actually 8 minutes. Wow. 8 minutes and 12 seconds long. Who said trance was ever short songs? So, you guys have any questions or anything? I'm going to start here when you guys don't have anything. If not, I'm going to go dive right into kick drums. Kick and bass design, basically. So. All right. So one of the most prominent things you guys are going to notice in dance music, obviously, is the kick drum. Uh, I think most producers actually start with the kick drum. It seems to be what they build around. Everyone has their own formula to doing it, but um, so with the kick drum, we're going to look at basically the best way to, in a sense, have a kick. Also, different styles of kicks, compression on the kicks, uh, you name it. So, this specific kick itself, it's already done. I'm not going to get too much into actually creating the kick drums right now, as I am more so the placements. There are so many numerous ways to create your kick drums. I think I'm going to save that for a completely different video. Building and designing just beats alone it can take an hour, 2 hours just to go over that with you guys. So just for this, I'm going to explain to you kind of just in this song how the kick works. So this is a 909 kick, actually, that's from my drum machine and EMX Electribe. And what I've done is I've actually gone in here and recorded this kick drum into here. So I get really clean, direct recording kick drums, as you guys can see in here. It is kind of spread out, so let's see. So once we get down into it, these kicks, I'm going to isolate this. I'm just going to show you guys just this kick and how it's designed. So as you guys can see, it's a very prominent hard kick. We turn the microphone off and let's do it again. So those kicks are fairly strong just by themselves. The biggest thing I see producers do often is uh, they put the kick too far in front of the song where the kick is the main thing, and then you play it over a large sound system with heavy subwoofers, and all you hear is that kick. None of the rest of the track actually translates through, and it seems like it's almost like an auditorial issue with a lot of producers. So the biggest mistake you don't want to make is overdriving your kick drum. The kick drum should be placed in the area where it fits best. So yeah, don't be afraid to go in there and do a little bit of compression, but be moderate. So on this kick drum, you guys might have heard within that the actual track, I use a filter to, I guess would be the only effect to do it. Basically, I'm using a high pass filter to accentuate the end of a certain part of the track and introduce the beginning. We call those filter drops on bass on kick drums. It is a very important production tool to filter out a lot of the frequencies that you're wanting to not use, and it creates the entire emotion of the track, I would say. I kind of call it sound shaping in a sense. You're basically going through each individual track and filtering it in certain parts of that track to make the certain sounds you're looking for pop out. So it's not always a tried and true thing. There are different ways different producers love doing it. For me personally, I usually go through each track individually, and I'm going to show you my automation I have on here. By the way, we're still on the right side of the screen here if you guys got lost or anything. So we're looking at right here. This whole entire thing I'm highlighting. So as you guys can see, these little squigglies that go up and down, this is the automation that I had planned for this track. Um, as you can see right here, these basically are what kills the drum, the kick drum, to go up and down and to bring in the other parts of the track. This is really important in your guys' creation of dance music. It shapes the entire arrangement correctly. And you want to do this also for all of your instruments. I think it's good to have a start with this, but also just go heavy with it. If you mess up, you can always go back and change things around, and you know. So that's one beautiful thing about music. It's never really a surefire way. You always see different artists doing different things, and I think that's kind of the cool thing about it. So um, we really, artists love looking at other artists' stuff. I think it's why we do this, basically. So another thing I'm wanting to do here, though, is I'm actually going to layer this kick drum. So I'm basically going to double it. Doubling is an effect that was used in the 70s really heavily by producers that were making experimental music, and also a lot of pop bands started using doubling in the late 70s. It's a effect that allows for stronger, more prominent use of space, basically inside of the music. If you can see like music as if having like a stage, doubling would give a stronger presence to anything that you're trying to essentially. So vocals is a big thing for doubling. Leads, you can double. Guitar solos, things like that. Those are important things to double. For this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate it and double it, and I'm going to actually add a filter to create a lighter sounding kick. This is going to double with the current kick drum, and when I do this, essentially I'm going to erase this, or I guess I can keep that automation. And I'm going to add a filter from one of my plugins that I have on here. Let's see, Waves. This will be coming from my plugin set from Waves. You guys probably might have heard of it, used it. So we're going to be using something called one knob filter in stereo. So one knob filter. So essentially what this is going to do is, it's a very quick, easy filter that you guys can use for just making a difference on a track. So let's see, go to set P's, high pass. So I believe this is high pass on this one. Set this right here. So I'm going to show you guys what this is going to do. It's not letting me add a high pass for some reason. Let's see what else in here I can use. So what we're doing is we're going to add another layer of this drum, this kick track, to basically be a lighter introductory track to the heavy. So you want to have two drum tracks. You want to have a drum track that has the higher frequencies you kind of hear that comes out, and then you want to have the lower one and then matching. And what that does is you can play around with that as far as tonal effects, and you would hear it on a large sound system as well. Let me see if I can add another filter. Let's see. I'm just going to go here and add your straight up Apple high pass filter just for the sake of it. So we're going to so that drum track would particularly stay around around in this range right here. So 384 hertz you want to cut it off at. If you now it's also going to base on your frequency of the actual drum pitch you're based on. So I'm kind of matching this one to it. For the most part though, you guys can play around with this and see, but I'm going to show you basically what it's going to sound like together with the whole entire arrangement once we do this. All right, so I played both of them for you guys. Make sure my mic's on or off. Okay, I played both of those for you guys so you can kind of see. If you don't have the best speakers, you might not be able to hear it right away, but essentially what you're doing is you're layering the top frequencies and the lower frequencies on the kick so that they have, almost in a sense, two channels to travel through the speakers with. Everyone from Deadmau5 to a major producer that you guys are probably into does this. It's to really bring out the floor in the track. It makes a huge difference. So it's something that I wanted to go in here and add. But yeah, so basically, if you guys are already dealing with a really low kick, go ahead and add a high kick into there. And I assure you, you guys are going to really notice a difference especially once it comes down to mix down. It's a really easy trick. You just go in here and Command D, duplicate it, and then all your automation, if you do have automation, will be there. So yeah, I mean, this is one quick way to really kind of make your sound a lot fatter. I think I noticed a lot of people that are making dance music right away. They notice that their music sounds very thin and not really, in your face as they want it to be. So my music is known to be really loud, actually, which in a sense is a good thing, but not good for others. So my biggest thing is really, especially recently, is trying to tone down everything and really kind of just make an equal sound that's really good, almost like a cinematic approach. So that's the way I've been doing it, for a while, and I think it works well. But as we learn new things, progressing, it's something that we always try to be better at what we do. So. Also too, not just EQing, but compression. Let me talk to you guys about bass compression. For this track, it was kind of already compressed, so I don't think I really added anything on here. But what I did do is actually side chaining. This is kind of skipping ahead a little bit, but with side chaining, I am essentially adding other instruments to the kick drum channel. And these instruments are going to, in a sense, fluctuate with the song itself. So as the kick hits, the side chain will go in, the kick releases, the compression goes back out, and then you have this kind of what we call a pumping effect to the music. You hear this wah 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 as the track is going. Um, what I do is I have a couple of leads that are actually side chained onto here, as you can see right here on the bottom right. This is side chained directly to the kick, so as this song goes and this lead kicks in, you're going to hear right, you see it right here. Now I'm going to solo this just so you guys can actually see what's going on with this lead. Now, as you guys can tell, that is sidechained the hell out of. Um, a lot of my tracks, I like to cut frequencies as much as possible, especially on lead parts. That way you have this really hard lead that comes in and then it goes out, and different parts of the music actually work together to make it like this whole kind of thing of its own. So it's kind of skipping ahead a little bit. I'm going to get more into that here in a second, but I just kind of want to show you how that's associated with the kick drum, because the way you design your kick will actually influence the other instruments that you have going into the mix. So going back to drums and oriented kind of things, now these are my tops. Tops, I call them basically, it's for hi-hats, snares, tom drums, cymbals, that kind of thing. I usually put them to a group and just call them tops, because really you don't really mess with them too much unless they need to be EQ'd or something like that. So you guys might have heard these tops. I'm going to go ahead and solo this for you. And I will play it. Not the most exciting thing in the world, but every little bit that you do to your music adds character. So when it comes down to certain types of music, especially like this, there's a lot going on. You don't want to add really crazy top parts that are just very complex. You want something that is just driving with a beat and easy to go to. But in other of my tracks, I do specifically really hone in on using top percussion, because, you know, especially in more Afrobeat and world music, you want really that to kind of shine through, and it makes a world of difference. So, depending on the kind of music you guys are doing, obviously your structure for your music is going to be different. But with this, making trance music, tops are kind of like just icing on the cake in a sense, and transitionary parts. Uh, so there we go. So for the most part, tops I think are pretty clean. I didn't really go through and EQ a lot of this. I picked this track specifically because I knew that the part that I was in of making this track, it was still, a lot of it needs to be finished, and I'm kind of like in the midst of that. So this is a good track. I can show you guys everything that needs to be, you know, like worked on without just it being a finished product. So the next thing I want to get on is probably bass. This bass I designed out of, well, actually I designed it in Serum, which is a plugin, but I froze the track and sent it to audio, which is probably not the best idea to do for this situation. I wanted to show you guys my bass design, but I'm just going to get into it and kind of show you guys what the bass is actually doing. This is what we call a driving rolling bass. It's really prominent in psytrance and other parts of trance. It is a triplet based grid, so instead of it being wah 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 as and those bass designs are really prominent in music nowadays, because triplets I think everyone's going to, even even mumble rap is in LA is switching to triplet. You know, da 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 da. That's what we call mumble rap, and that's what we call triplets in mumble rap. It's coming back. You know, triplets weren't really messed with until early '70s in music, and now all of a sudden in the past 2 years we're bringing it back. So dance music, same thing. We're using triplets. Moombahton uses triplets, weird timings and stuff. So when you go to produce triplet, you can actually switch this entire grid here to a triplet grid, and then it makes it a lot easier to design triplet basses and drum designs that way. So with this bass, I'm just going to kind of give you guys an example of what this is doing. You can see my automation lines here that I wrote. This is also another thing that I used for creating emotion and emphasis within the track. Emotion, especially through the bass line, is really prominent. The secondary part I would say that's most important in dance music is the bass line. The bass line is something that, you know, you don't see a whole lot of people actually, like, especially these days, spending a lot of time doing. They just kind of throw in a really generic bass line and call it good. I traditionally don't like doing that myself. I actually program my bass lines to in key, so as the music and the progression moves, the bass line moves in key with everything. It just makes your track so much more emotional and really, you know, fit. So the biggest thing I would say to you guys to really design your kicks and your bass lines really well. That's the most prominent thing you're going to hear in dance music. I don't care what genre it is. Um, off the start, that's what people are going to look for. So with this bass, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys here, and let me know if you have any questions. Sorry about that. I have no idea why that's doing that. Let me try this again. Lord Almighty. For some reason, that bass is coming through like hell. What happened? Alright. Just making sure my stream is still good. We have a lot of weird technical issues with live streams. They're trying to make it easier these days, but... Okay, let's see here. Whoa. Alright, hang on. So much better. Okay, sorry about that. I think my audio driver started messing up, guys. Okay, I'm going to show you this bass and what's going on with it. Let me know if you guys have questions. So hopefully you guys heard that. So basically I was explaining to you guys the filter drops that you want to do on your bass, as well as the design of the bass notes itself. I usually stick to triads, so usually when you design basses, if you do, let's just say you're doing a C, you go to a G, and then you go to a A. So depending on what you want to do, if you want a ascending triad or a descending triad, um, those are usually what I do. I know those are kind of music theory terms, but for the most part, I try to stick to mathematical proportions when designing basses, things like that. You're going to notice that all music is relatively similar in the way people produce music, with thirds and triads, and the same thing. Dance music is exactly the same way. So if you are familiar with composition or music making or anything a little of that, and really any music, you can kind of get the idea of how to design even high energy trance music like this. So that's just a little bit on the bass. Wish I had my Serum plugin. I balanced this actually to audio, but I'm gonna get a little bit more in depth on straight bass design. That is a whole nother, just like kick drum design. That's like a whole entire course in itself. Generally, what I am using those Omnisphere and Serum to really design these really heavy basses and then bring them out for people to enjoy in a sense. So the next thing I want to move on is leads. So I'm going to show you guys exactly what's going on with this. So leads are one of my favorite thing of making. I think I spend probably a good 80% of my time just developing sounds when I create music, and developing progressions and melodies. So you know it is nice having the music up here, but I think a lot of it is just really coming down to jamming and just enjoying the process of making music. Um, so with that, this is one of my favorite instruments that I have on here. This is called Omnisphere. Um, this this bad boy is probably one of the best VSTs out right now in terms of everything it can do. Um, I think I had a lot of people ask me about this and how it works and the greatness of it, and it can do anything you want. This is a rompler, a sampler, a amazing synthesizer. I really wish they made something like this almost in a hardware version. Um, so this is one of my main go-tos. You're gonna hear this lead I have going on here. I'm gonna switch this over here. So just so you guys know what I'm doing. Okay, so this is the main lead of the track. I'm going to explain to you what's going on here. Let me just do a little demonstration. So that is the main lead part. Now, if I take the compression off of it, because this is, like I said, directly related or directly linked up to my kick drum tracks, I'm going to take sidechain off of it. I want you guys to hear it without the sidechain. So right now what it's doing is this lead is connected uh, through the routing to my kick drum. As this kick hits every time, the volume and the compression from this lead channel is going to get sucked into it. So you have this going, and as soon as the kick stops, it's going to be pushed back out. So you have this pumping effect, and that's what you are actually hearing with this wah 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 wah, is this side chaining. So what I want you guys to do is really listen closely and see with the side chaining off, it's going to sound a little bit different. Here you go. So as you guys can see, it's basically sustained notes longer, and those sustained notes are actually being sucked in by the compression as you add sidechaining. So you can get all sorts of cool effects with this. I use this almost in every dance track I make. You know, you can also get different effects too. As soon as the drum kick stops, you're going to hear my leads actually get longer like that. So it's actually a completely sidechaining effect, and you can use it millions of different ways. You can do alternate busing to this. So much you can really do with sidechaining. It's probably the most used and sought after thing on dance music itself in general. So let's see here. Next thing I want to show you guys is basically MIDI parameters. So one thing I'm really good at doing is playing music. I play piano, I play guitars. Over here on the left side, I want to show you the actual MIDI notes to what's going on. So in this track, I'm just going to play it the way that I designed it. So if you come over here on the keyboard, so in a sense, what I'm doing is I've created a progression in D and have the bass line being wrapped around this progression. It goes to D, to A, and then to G back, and then all the way descending down the scale. This is a major scale, so it kind of sounds kind of high, but depending on how you played it, can also sound somewhat dissonant. So. And making music like that right on the fly is probably one of my favorite, funnest thing to do. The one thing I really do not like doing, it's very time consuming, is writing individual notes into here. Some people do that. It's so time consuming. Over on this side, writing notes is probably I know everyone can't play music, so forgive me, but it really helps to have some sort of musical knowledge and know what you're attacking, basically. So these notes right here are the bass notes. These are essentially what you're hearing right there. As you can see on the left hand part of the screen, the notes are going to light up in their respective keys. So with that, then you're also going to see this lead part, which is over here on the upper left part of the screen. So these leads are really important for you guys to design, make them clean, especially if you're going to be using arpeggiators, because it's going to affect the whole entire mix of how you actually create music, or how your mix comes out. The most important thing I could say is, after you guys actually write music, go in here and adjust these down here at the bottom. Let me see if I can blow this up a little bit more for you guys. So down here at the bottom, you have velocity. These little red lines, I don't know if you guys can, I think you guys can see this. So these lines right here are representing, there we go. These lines right here are representing how hard you actually hit the notes. So if you go, turn this down. It's going to show a very low velocity. So if you want your music loud, and you can go here and adjust this too. So if you want certain notes to be higher or lower in volume, you can actually go in here after you recorded the track and individually drop these down, which is super useful. Um, Ableton has made a great program for doing this stuff. And I remember when I first started producing music, I was using Reason 4. People still use Reason, but amazing program for its time, but it was extremely hard to work with. Doing simplistic things would take you an hour. In Ableton, it seems like you could do the most complicated things within 5 minutes, and it's mind-blowing how they have this. So leads are really important because in choosing your lead, you also want something to cut through your entire mix. This lead in particular is a sawtooth wave. We have the whole entire... So we have, this is the wave table right here is what we're looking at. The wave table, you can go through and specifically create the actual, or I guess not even just the wave, but where at in the wave that you're wanting to sample. So this is basically a really high-end sampler slash synthesizer that Omnisphere has made. And you have FM oscillations, you have ring oscillations, unisons, harmonies, granular, all this stuff right here at your disposal. But when you want to design a lead, the most important thing you're looking for is something to cut through all those other frequencies. So if you guys have bass and kick drums going on, do not pick a light lead unless it's going to be an arpeggio or something that's going in the background. And this lead, you want something nasty, you want something out. So as it goes, the specific name of this patch is Nasty Business Lead. So this is what you want. You guys want to look for something that's really prominent. It's going to come through in your guys' mixes because ultimately that's what's going to make good music. Okay. So with all of these going on here, you have your MIDI information, you have your you also have effects here that's included inside of the synthesizer too. I wouldn't get too deep onto these because it is going to affect your overall sound, and it's a lot harder to go in here and affect these parameters unless you had them routed down in the effects menu down here. So yeah, that's pretty much for leads on that end. That's one lead I have. So the other lead I have is this thing you're probably going to hear. Alright, so these are what I call filler leads. I'm actually going to go in here and edit there, or change the name of this. So filler leads are essentially leads that incorporate the spaces that the other lead does not. Filler leads are usually for in-between spots of music that, like this part, this would be the next verse that you're wanting to still have a lead, but you want it to be a little bit lighter. So music is all about call and response. You initiate the first call, and then you wait for the response, and then you initiate the second call, and then you wait for that response. We call that ABAB in the musical world, and it's something that is a theme in music that is really good. So call and response you can do a lot in dance music too, and it really comes through as like being anthematic in your music. So this is a filler lead, one of them. The other lead that I have going on here is this robo voice thing. Let's see if we can get onto this. All right. Here's the robo voice. So that robo voice is actually a vocoder that is, let's see here. So this is also another Omnisphere patch as well. Let's see. Come on. So what we have going on here is basically an arpeggiated, vocoded voice. I'm going to show you guys what this is doing right now. All right, so that is basically like another filler lead that I have. This is going underneath the vocals. These filler leads make the hugest difference as far as your sound is sounding fat. If I were you, I would at least add 3 or 4 different leads into your tracks and have them switching in and out. This is going to make your music sound full. It's going to make it sound articulate, and it's going to make it sound future. Um, if you just have a couple of, parts that just repeat over and over again, you're going to lose people's attention. The most important thing you want to have is music that is engaging and switching all the time, something new, something fresh. And when you do that, you change the way that people hear and perceive music. So what I love doing is really playing with people's perceptions and their sounds and the way they listen to music. So I love changing the way someone actually does something. And it's beautiful because with music, you can really open up someone's heart and someone's eyes. And, this is why we do this, because going from music that is popular today, that, is the same basic sound, the same basic instruments that we're using, we need to step away from that and create music that is engaging and futuristic. And that's why, for me as a producer, it's our job to basically influence the culture and influence the future of our generation. And so don't ever, if you're a struggling producer out there, do not ever think that what you're doing is not up to par, because you just might be 10 years ahead of your time. In fact, I was. For the longest time, playing my own music out at events was almost like people couldn't understand it, especially where we live here locally in Modesto and all that area. My music just did not take hold with the local people. It was kind of funny. But once I had ventured out to, bigger events and cities and forest parties and things like that, all of a sudden everybody loved my stuff. And it was because of the fact that the way people generally listen to music, if they have not been taught anything different, they will be stuck to that same box that they're used to. So what I would do if you're a musician is create something new, create something that no one has done before, and just go out there right off the lines. Make sure that you're doing what you love, but at the same time create something entirely different. And that's what my thing is trying to sound different. And lead writing is one of my favorite things to do in all of music. So yeah, fun stuff. So see what's next here on the agenda. So I showed you guys side chaining. Automation. So I'm just going to go over here and just kind of explain to you guys just a little bit about automation. I'm not sure how much of you guys producers use automation, but as you can see, these tracks here, I would go through and automate almost everything as you can, especially towards the end. So I'm going to flip to the end of this track and just show you what this is doing. You're going to hear the last 8 bars are going to be kick drums, and the other this last robo voice synthesizer is going to kind of play out. So listen closely to the automation that I'm using in this and how the music actually kind of, in a sense, it forms itself out. So the music will actually just kind of die out in a sense by itself. And what I did was I went here and automated filters and pass throughs so that it would basically just kind of like feel like the end of a song when you come to the end of something. So here we go. All right. So one thing I'm going to go here and do is I'm going to add another high pass filter on here actually. So what I want is I want that robo voice thing, what I'm going to call it, to actually pan out with the drum track. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go in here and into the cutoff frequency, and I'm going to create an automation line. So I'm going to create a point, and then I'm going to add this and create it like that way. So let's see, high pass. Let's try this again. Let's see what it does. How's that? Is that much better? I'm going to bring this down just a little bit. So it's really important to really, especially at the end of your tracks, to signal to the listener that the track is ending. The reason why this outro is so long, because when you're DJing, when you want to mix into the other track, you want to give yourself some leeway time. So when I put this track out and it goes to distribution channels or whatever, one of the things that labels actually look for, and this is for you producers too, is they look for music that is actually easy to mix in and out of. At first, my music was not designed that way at all. I designed music that was kind of like, as I guess rock music or anything. It was just, you had a really beautiful intro, you had the song, the whole thing, and then you just have an outro and it just kind of disappears into nothing. With dance music, you actually almost want to have the kick drum keep going out, because what it's signaling is that this track is ending and another one is coming. Same thing for the beginning tracks. The beginning of a track, a lot of dance music starts off with a kick, bam, right off the bat. I do this once in a while, not too often, but it's really good for DJing, because if you guys use CDJs and Pioneer equipment, the first thing you're going to do is when you put a cue a track in, it's going to automatically quantize itself to that first beat. So it's going to lock into that first beat it hears, and then as soon as you hit the play button or cue button, it's going to start playing right off, and your music is actually more locked in time that way. It's not always the way I like doing, because when I actually design music from a production point of view, when you hear a kick drum, it's just the most, like, it is too jarring, I think, sometimes on the ears. So a lot of my music, I like to start out with at least a pad or a vocal or something that is a little bit easier to the ears, and then it builds up. My build-ups are really great, and I love building up music. It's probably one of my favorite things I love to do. So, just to give you that idea, you want to make music that is mixable in and out of, that's going to be easy for other DJs to play your music. If you make it hard on them, they're not going to want to pick your music to play. So that's really important, because, the idea of making music is to share it with other people, and your music to get played by other DJs, and then, them to, give you feedback on your tracks and so on and so forth. So it's it's important to really, make sure that your tracks are playable for other people. So, all right. The other thing is too, I'm not going to base on this too much. This is my last on part on leads, but panning as well. I don't even know if I even actually panned this one. Generally, what I do for panning, I have about 20 for my main lead. I usually keep it in center, but if I have alternate leads, like with this robo voice, I'm probably going to pan it 20% to the left. So let's just go to this track here, which is track 15 on the arrangement window, or the mix down window. Robo voice. And then I'm going to pan this just ever so slightly to the right. So I generally pan it about 20% to the right. My other leads that will probably be like this sidechain ARP. I would pan this 20% to the left, and so on and so forth. I try to get about 3 different instruments in there, so I have one on each side. And what this is going to do is going to really separate your instruments, as if you were kind of staring at music from a room. So you want to make sure to have your kick and your bass and everything in the middle, and then your other instruments on this side, and then pan it to this side. That way it kind of gives a whole entire stereo mix of everything that you're trying to do. It's really important that way. In cinema, most movies, panning is the #1 used perceptional tool to change the way someone perceives things. And then there's automatic panning and all things like that. But if you want to perceive the way people hear music, play with panning. It's the most, especially if you automate that panning and have it switching between channels. Some really cool stuff and effects you guys can do with that. So, all right, moving on here. Arpeggiators. Arpeggiations are used in dance music all the time. It's probably one of the first things you heard off of if you were a kid in the 90s and you heard like Tiesto or Ferry Corsten. You're going to really notice that the first thing you hear is these beautiful arpeggios. I created an arpeggiated track here. It's not. Needs to be reworked, and I'm going to explain to you why. But this is a beautiful arpeggiation that is going to be it's not going to be a lead part, but it's going to be a accompaniment to the lead part. So I'm going to go ahead and play this for you, and let me know what you think. So that is kind of like a bass arpeggiation, but it's mainly to help exemplify the other parts of the track. Um, Josh, thank you for tuning in, man. I just wanted to answer your question. Is that a robot voice as a synth or a sample? That is a very good question, actually. So that is actually a synthesizer. Let me pop that open and show you really quick. So here is the synthesizer for the robotic voice thing. As you can see, this is basically they call it large teeth, but it's a sawtooth kind of formed wavetable. It's connected to an arpeggiator, which is creating the I guess how it sounds like a human, the tonalities of the voice. But the actual voice itself is more of like a vocoder. So if you ever used a vocoder in a keyboard, it's kind of like the same thing. You have a carrier wave, and then you have the voice that's over it. So this is kind of like the same thing. The patch actually happens to be called damaged vocal cords, but it's basically just an arpeggiated sawtooth wave that has different tonalities to make it sound like a sample. Although sampling with these kinds of things are really used very often. Um, in fact, I've actually used several samples of this stuff before, but a lot of my stuff I make all straight out of synthesizers. I am a huge synth nerd, but samplers are just as powerful, and you can do a lot with them. So, hope that answers that question there for you. I'm going to jump back out of this. Okay, so my next topic here we're going to jump on is, the arpeggiator. So, creating clean arps is really huge, especially in dance music itself. I'm going to jump to this second part here, so I want you guys to hear more of what's going on this end. Let me zoom in here. Zoom. I can't use my keyboard shortcut for zoom in and out because it kills the stream, and I have it linked up, so I need to go back and fix that. But let's see here. What is going on? Okay. So I'm going to play this here, and let me know what you guys think. Okay, like I said before, so this is actually also sidechained as well. So this arpeggiator, I could say, is sidechained to my kick drum. So as the kick hits, bam, 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 so is this arpeggiation is going to be sucked into the compression. I'm going to play this without sidechaining, and you're actually going to hear what it sounds like just on its own. So here we go. So, in a sense, that arpeggio, or that arpeggio, I'm going to have it coming out. I have to go through the track actually and replay it. I literally play this in. And one of the more annoying things that you have with timings and things like that is that Ableton naturally wants to quantize everything, which can be useful and then can be a really huge pain in the ass as well. So, this whole entire section, I'm actually going to probably have to re-record it because there's just too many mistakes. I can maybe try to salvage some of it. It's just the timing of the arpeggiations with the track can actually be off. So when you are playing with arpeggiators, the most important thing to really, especially in recording it, is to make sure that your trigger notes are exactly on point. A lot of times when you're composing really dance music that's really complicated, your trigger points might be off a little bit, so you literally have to go in there. I'll show you what I have to do. So I open this up, and as you can see here on the right side of the screen, you have to go in and basically fix each note individually. So right here, like these might be off. So as you guys can see, that is extremely time consuming. Um, and also, I'm not even 40% through that whole entire thing. So depending on how bad this is, I can go back and actually fix this by hand, or I can just go in and rewrite the entire thing. Whatever works best for you. Some people like to go in and actually fix it one by one. This is why I'm saying actually writing music without a keyboard is, I don't know how people do it. I don't. Writing in music with a mouse is just too archaic, and someone can do it. Like, you can make really good dance tracks off of that, but like I it would just be hard for me not to have like an understand without a full keyboard. So one of the biggest things I think for this is to make sure that your guys' arpeggiation lines are really clean and that they match with the tempo of the track. So a lot of these, if you go in here and look at the bottom here, my velocities are just completely jacked up. Like right here, I'm going to go and add this one. All of these little red lines here at the bottom, the ones that are lower need to be fixed. So usually this also means too, this first starting note here is off. So as I'm actually playing it with it, it's somewhere along the line the computer either quantized it to the nearest note or the grid and it put it in the wrong place, or I just played it wrong and it came in wrong. So luckily with all this though, it is fixable in the MIDI spectrum, and you can actually go in here and do everything, which is really nice. So that is, as far as that arpeggiation goes, you know, going in there and fixing your art patterns after they have been done is really important. You want that stuff to come out cleanly and right. Also, tonally, arpeggios are going to add this kind of pumping effect to your mix as well. So just on our arps alone, I can do a whole entire course on that. But one of the things I love doing with arpeggios is making them clean and pretty. There is one producer in trance right now I'm really actually into. His name's Orkita, and he's been coming around the San Francisco music scene a little bit more lately, thanks to Trance Family SF. But his music, as far as his arpeggiations go, are beautiful. They sound like clocks. And our Omnisphere actually has a lot of these built in. So if you guys are used to these trance, you know, like really powerful arpeggiations, try looking at it the other way, looking something beautiful and pretty, melodic and things like that. you could do so much with this as far as making it sound even played like a human. You know, before we had the age of computers and automatic arpeggiators, we had pianists that were actually playing arpeggiations almost better than a computer would. So it really had to make your compositional and your playing skills really up there. But luckily nowadays with the computers and stuff, we don't have to be Mozarts. You can be a kid in a bedroom producing a track and go off with it. So um, now with a lot of this, obviously you can automate this. You can do a ton of different stuff to this, but keep it pretty simple with arpeggios. Don't over process them. Just let them kind of breathe, because they are going to let the music breathe out on its own, which is something that you want to do. And then also the most important thing on my last note here on arpeggios is mix down. So in the mix down, I actually set these tracks to be a lot lower. All these tracks are a lot higher than they need to be. So once I actually bounce this out for mastering, I'm going to go down and re-level all these tracks. It's really important when you send a masters that you have your master tracks really low. So what I do is usually for this track right here, I'm going to select it. I have it about 3 or 4 decibels lower than everything else, and that's to whenever like the track goes into just a nice and calm spot, which I'm going to see if I can find here. You're just going to hear the music come through, or the arpeggios come through, and they're really pretty when they come through. Oh Lord. I think my audio driver's not liking what I got going on right now. Let me fix this. Okay. So I'm going to drop into this part right here, and then I want you guys to hear the instruments working together. So as you guys can kind of hear that, when the drums go away and all the other busy stuff, and you just have a couple of instruments, you want the music and the sounds to flow together harmonically. That means that all the sounds are basically of the same, the foundation. So you have your foundation notes and you have your harmonics on top of that. In electronic music, we are able to play with harmonics more than anything. Harmonics is where you have your bass note and then you have the octaves on top of that. So however far you want to go with this, at least to make your music harmonically active. What that means is that all the sounds in the sound palette that you're doing all match the same frequency pitch. So when you're doing that, it's going to make all your music sound together. It's going to make it full and make it sound bright. You know, one of my favorite things to do in music is actually sound design, and that's what I'm going to it's kind of what I'm showing you guys today, is basically mostly sound design stuff and how to make your tracks actually sound good, as opposed to just building beats and basic stuff like that, which is on its own science. But making your music sound good and creating your own signature is kind of like what I'm into. So yeah, with that being said, I think use these effects and use these arpeggiators really well and experiment with them. That's the best thing that you can do, is just get in there and do it. So all right, moving on. The next part we're going to go into is vocals. Looks like we have about 20 minutes left, so I think I can get through here. The vocal parts I'm using are, I have 3 different vocal parts actually here. So the first one that you guys are going to notice right off the bat is one of these I used as a sample from splice.com. A great place if you guys are looking for vocal samples, things like that. I'll just go ahead and play it here for you. Okay, so that is basically a D minor vocal effect of what I'm using, or a vocal loop. And I have it just repeating for the most part throughout this introduction of the track. And then once it actually comes to the chorus, you guys are going to hear this. Let's see here. Sorry about that. My vocal part is right here. So these two vocal parts are actually in sync with each other, but apparently I have them on two different tracks. I forgot about that. So this vocal part is basically what I call call-in effects, kind of like A-B. So you have your ooh, and then the second, which is the response, ah. This is something that's really enchanting. African tribal music, Eastern India music. A lot of this is based on certain prayers and the way that they do their voice. It's very musical. So if you guys ever have like documentaries on like National Geographic or History Channel, they have a lot of content there that you can sample and actually use for this kind of stuff. So, you know, it depends on where your guys' background is. My background is I love world music. I love all this sorts of stuff. So these vocal libs are very good at layering your music and make it sound fucking clean. So, yeah, those are basically those two vocal parts. And then the next one, which you guys are going to hear, I'm going to get into this a little bit deeper. So this is the main vocal phrase you guys are hearing throughout the song. Now, as I play it, you guys are going to hear, they're actually two different vocal parts added together to harmony. So the first one, I guess let's play the first one. What I did is I took these two, over here on the right screen, I took these two vocal parts basically, and they're exactly the same, except what I did is I detuned one down to the fifth. So you have a normal sounding one, which I believe is this one here. Let's see. I can hardly breathe. Okay, so that's actually the upper one. So I'm going to show you, or the lower one. I'm going to show you the upper one first. I can hardly breathe, and I can hardly see, but I can't forget you. No, I can't forget you. I can hardly breathe, and I can hardly see, but I can't forget you. Okay, so that is the high pitch, or the high vocal that we have. And then what I did is I doubled it and then dropped it down to the lower fifth. This fifth is how you create. I don't know if you guys listen to trap music. Trap music, this is really prominent, especially rap, trap music, a lot of 808, thrift works, if you guys are into thrift works. This is exactly how they designed their vocal parts to be super detuned and almost super psychedelic sounding. So the second version I made to this was one that's dropped down to a fifth. I'm going to play this for you right now. I can hardly breathe, and I can hardly see, but I can't forget you. No, I can't forget you. I can hardly breathe, and I can hardly see, but I can't forget you. So now that we have the higher and the lower, we're going to combine them both together. And you're going to get this. I can hardly breathe, and I can hardly see, but I can't forget you. No, I can't forget you. I can hardly breathe, and I can hardly see, but I can't forget you. You guys like that? So once you take that out and then add it to the complete mix, you get this. All right. So, new automation. So, in a sense, those vocal parts are very, very cool to play with. One of the first things I started doing with detuning vocals was just recording my own voice and just seeing what I can do with it. I produced a track a couple of years ago called Down the Rabbit Hole. It was phenomenal in the sense of what I was able to actually do with my voice, and I did it actually all on this keyboard, surprisingly. It literally sounded like I was like literally going down a rabbit hole, like my voice would drop octaves and down the rabbit hole, the rabbit hole, the rabbit hole, and it gave me this whole entire like almost like psychedelic Mad Hatter kind of thing that I was doing. And yeah, vocals, detune these things, mash these things up, warp them. It will add so much character to your tracks the more that you experiment with these things. So this is just the bass vocal on what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to go in here and write probably my own lyrics into the verse and detune it and do some crazy and cool stuff as well. But this is kind of like placeholders and the gist of what I want for the track to be. I'll probably name this track Can't Forget You just because of the fact of what the main vocal is saying. But yeah, this is one of the main vocals of this track that I'm actually using. And of course, we do have, you know, more of everything we got going on here with this. So having two sets of layers, I not only usually have like just one or two sets of vocals, but I have different layers of vocals. So vocals for the tops, lower vocals, and then if I need a vocal when you break down, usually it's almost like spoken word that I use sometimes. Um, Usually just to do like the name of the track or something. I got one called Distant Thunder, where it's thunder and lightning in the background, and you have like a woman's voice comes up and says Distant Thunder, and it's beautiful. So that's why I love designing electronic music, because the sky is literally the limit on what you're wanting to do. Okay, so let's see here. Another important thing to do on your vocals is actually your effects. So over here, down here at the bottom, you have two basic effects that comes in almost probably every Ableton template. You have your stadium reverb and then a filter delay, which is your track effect for delay. These two are bussed in, so as you can see here on the left screen, you see these blue knobs that are blue, and most of them are turned, some of them aren't. These are my effect sends. I usually do group up tracks to have them going through these effect sends. That way you get these reverb trails going on. The whole sound sounds like one. Um, using these, you want to use these sparingly, but you want to use them correctly. So especially in vocals, if you want to add that kind of effect where it just keeps on going like a delay trail, right away you can send these through the buses and you can get really instant good results. If you don't want to use the buses, you can actually effect them individually on the channels, and you can make them, I mean, any way you want. Um, you know, usually for most people though that don't have extremely fast computers, the best way to do it is to just do it through the effect busing. It uses less CPU that way, and I think most people are okay with that with the output of it. However, if you guys want to get specifically deep into your guys' vocals, you can go there and add the effect. And then another effect that I do want to go through on vocals really quickly is a gate. Gates are very important. Let me see if I can find a gate here. Might have to use one of Ableton's gates actually. Here we go. I'm just going to add a really simple gate. On this vocal. So gate is really important if you guys want to have chopped up vocals. So in a lot of trance music, you're going to hear it, or I guess that'd be kind of like the effect. It's really chopped up vocals. And to get that effect, what you want to do is you want to use a gate. A gate is basically going to take your amplitude of your volume of whatever you're putting into it, and you set a threshold, and then once it rises below that volume, it's going to cut it off immediately. If you guys are really good at doing this, it will actually save you from having to use a lot of filters and doing a lot of stuff. So I'm going to use a gate on this vocal here just to prove kind of what I'm doing and affect it. So here we go. Nope, hang on, my bad. What do we got going on here? Oh, that's why. Let's see. I can hardly breathe. I see, but I can't forget you. No, I can't forget you. Alright, I'm going to adjust that gate and make it more prominent. So gates you get really cool effects out of if you guys want to use it. Trying to find where the other one I used to use for vocal effects. Let's see, it might even be in here. Audio effect rack. Modulation. Wow, they even have vocoders in here. I want to check this out just because I'm curious, actually. I can hardly breathe, and I can hardly see, but I can't forget you. No, I can't forget you. And I can hardly see, but I can't forget you. No, I can't forget you. Okay. That was something I just wanted to see what that was. But basically what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create like a slicing effect for you guys that is basically going to create this vocal and make it go like that. So you guys can use this in trance, but they added a couple of things here since I switched to Ableton 10. Here we go. I think this will work. A chopper. Get to the chopper. All right, let's see. Let's try it now.
I can hardly breathe, and I can hardly see, but I can't forget you. No, I can't forget you. I can hardly breathe, and I can hardly see, but I can't forget you. No, I can't forget you.
So basically, there you go. They call it a chopper now, which is, I don't know, it's a different name, but essentially it's a gate is what it is, and you're wanting to create a gate that pushes everything really up to the top. So, dang, we are already at less than 10 minutes. Okay, moving on. Textures. Textures is background noises that you guys can add. These are kind of like textures. I'm going to go in here and show you what a texture is. And then, let me see if I have it in here. Let's see. Okay. So these are textures that I added to the song, basically just as like fillers so that you guys can see what's going on with it. But these textures aren't anything that you guys have to use. These are just little things, that's in place. So here's what they kind of sound like. Those are basically just little arpeggiated textures that I added to just add more emotion and emphasis to the track itself. I wish I had time to get into deeper, gritty textures. Let me see if I have time to get into this really quick. Texturing is really good for cinematic music if you guys are into composing music for video and cinema and that kind of thing. Really important that you guys use this because it'll create your music to be experimental. So here is just a good example of what a texture is. So those are basically the gist of textures. Beautiful sounds that you guys can really add in. It goes on and on and on. You guys can get hang drums. Let's just check this out. Um, Anything that you guys can think of that is, you know, beautiful. It's part of making music. You know, these are organic. You can use organic sounds. You can use synthetic sounds. Textures is a whole something that you guys want to add to your tracks and makes it sound more unique to itself. Um, and also make sure it fits the timbre of your music. So the actual tonal version of what your music you want it to be. Go ahead and just play around with this. I play a lot of around with organic textures. Um, Everything from like rubbing carpet to noises of cans to doing things like that. We add all this in music, and it makes a huge difference as far as like sampling and things go. So, you know, feel free to go in there and you know, play around with textures in the way that you know want to actually maybe design it, because who knows, you guys might make a beat that might sell to the next, become the next Dead Mouse or something. So, all right. So moving on, textures, kind of a cinematic point that I just wanted to make. The next thing is risers and white noise. I am running out of time here a little bit, so I'm going to cut this short. Risers are really good if you guys want to go in here and make something. I'm just going to use this since I'm here. So risers are everything that you guys hear in dance music. That's zzz, and it kind of makes that climax. So with risers, you got to be really careful of how you use them, because if not, then they overpower everything, just like this. So, for some reason my mic isn't muting the way it needs to. So with these risers, I wish I can go in here and like actually put them in here, but I usually write my white noise by a chaos pad, or you can actually do it various different ways. But these are things that I usually save to the last part of the mix. So once you guys have your track all situated, you like your arrangement, everything where it's at, go in and add these risers and add these effects. This is kind of like the icing on the cake that you guys want to add. Don't be afraid to, you know, get in there and do it, but also keep these riser volumes very low, as they are going to prominent and be really loud in the rest of your guys' mix. They're kind of just the icing on the cake, you know what I'm saying? You guys want to do this at the last part, and make sure that with all of your risers and things that you add like this, that you keep the noise levels low, because it is going to affect the rest of the mix. So my next part, before I wrap this up, I want to just focus a little bit on mix down. You guys, now this is pretty much in the part where you guys have your track ready to go. Now it's time to get this ready to either be sent out to a mastering agent, or if you're going to master it yourself and be dangerous, totally up to you. So one thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to go through each individual track. You guys are going to see here on the left how these have red on them. It's because there's automation attached. You're going to want to take these levels and literally all have them at about this level. So you want to almost initialize every track that you have in your mix that stays at the same level. The best thing to do is to go through each individual track and make sure in the whole entire song that's exactly where you want it to be. And also at the end of the day, when you're done with mixing this track, if you see here on your master channel, you want to make sure this is no higher than right here. So when I play this music, I want this to be low, because when you send this to a mastering agent, they're going to take all the dynamics and everything in your track, and they're going to boost it up to as much as they can with the headroom. So you want to make sure to have your music um, able to work with, because if you send a mastering agent with your track maxed out, they're going to send it back to you and say, go back and redo it. So what I'm going to tell you guys here is to basically, this is towards the end of the process. Once you actually have your track ready to go through here and just individually take these tracks and then remix the entire thing in the mix down and listen to it over and over and over again and make sure you get it the way you want it. So that once you get to that point of your mix, you want your levels to be right around here, and I'm going to show you what that is right now. So now that we have that basically covered, I was showing you guys that the master level needs to be down at around halfway. We call that initialized. The reason for that is because once they actually put your track into not automation, sorry, mastering, the mastering agent is going to look at your overall tonal structure, and if it's too loud, they're going to send that back to you. Their whole idea is you want your track to be as low as possible and then bring it up with plugins and hardware and things like that to where you can hear the mastering engineer really do his work. So by all means, guys, once you make your music, you can listen to it loud, but really composing it to a level to where it's good for a mastering agent is going to really help you guys a lot. That's the most important thing I probably learned in the last 5 years, is getting my tracks actually ready for mastering engineers to take a look at, because there will be come a time in your guys' career where you are going to have other people look at your work, and they are going to judge you based on how loud your music is. If your music is over blaring and loud, which I like to kind of be, if you send it to them loud, they're going to kick it back to you right away. So just coming from a standpoint of a person who likes to be their music to be tonally loud, it was kind of a learning curve for me to really understand what they wanted at first. So yeah, go in there and at the end of, if you have your levels right, ready for the mix down, the other thing I would say is go to the end of your track. I don't know if you guys can hear that. But something I was explaining to you guys before is that your guys' reverb and delay trails are still going to be prominent at the end of this track. What you're going to want to do is go in there, and once you bounce out that track, you want to make sure you have enough room for those delay and those effect trails. If you don't, it's going to go towards the end of the track and it's like ba-da-da, ba-da, ba-da-da-da, where it's supposed to keep going, and it's going to be cut off right there. So once you're done, you're almost ready to bounce, go through and actually make sure that all of your reverb, delay trails, everything you want that you're hearing is actually physically in the timeline of the track. If you cut it off too abruptly, the computer will think, oh, you're stopping it here, and you're gonna get it, and you're gonna try to figure out why it's not there, and it's because you're cutting it off at the end too much. So make sure to have your reverb and delay trails, everything there, and then once you're ready to bounce this out, go ahead and listen to it on, I usually bounce out to a wave first, and then do an MP3. I think Ableton 10 does have the ability to do MP3s now, which is really cool. So with that, just make sure you guys have your levels lowered for mastering, and that's pretty much just going to wrap it down for mix down. I think we're almost about out of time, so I'm going to wrap this up. Just explain to you a little bit about my post-production process. So usually after I have my track complete, I bounce it out, and I do a lot of my mastering myself, which is something else I can get out into later. I have another program for that. But mastering usually takes me at least a good, I would say a couple hours to really go through it individually and make sure it sounds right. Um, a couple of things you want to do if you guys do have SoundClouds or other things like that is something called meta tagging. If you guys do uh, produce stuff out to an MP3, meta tagging is going into the actual MP3 file and adding your artist name, the track name itself, the year, and also the artwork. Um, when doing this, if your track ever gets renamed, so let's say if someone downloads your MP3, and then they can just go in there and rename the track, their name. But if there's a meta tagged ID to that, nobody can go in there and change that track name except yourself, or unless you open it with an editor. So it's really important for you guys to tag all your associated information in there, so that if for some reason it gets lost in the file name, in a sense, your meta tag data is still there to give you credit for that track. Really important, especially in today's society of everything's MP3s now. Another thing which I do is after this point I would go into Photoshop and start making art. Another kind of favorite process. I love doing this, but that's totally the way you guys want to do it. Art is its own. Some people shop out their art to other people and artists. I try to make my own, but for my album covers and things like that, I do definitely have other people do it, just because I feel like I like to showcase other artists on my work as well. Um, Another thing to do is promotion in social media. Really push out this work on social media. This is what I'm doing to you guys now, and I really appreciate you guys watching this. Social media has become a huge platform for me to really get this out. I've always been doing my own production stuff, and now I can actually share with what I do behind the studio with you guys, and it's really exciting. This is just, I had an extreme amount of fun doing this with you guys. Can't believe the 2 hours is already up. And pretty much, I think I've covered mostly everything for it. We're at 2 hours and 10 minutes now, so I'm just gonna leave this to some Q&A. If you guys have any questions or suggestions or feedback, let me know. Otherwise, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up. Let me know if you guys have any questions in the comments. Also, please follow my YouTube pages and Facebook pages, and I'm also on Instagram as Magik Plan. I'm going to go ahead and post this in the link in the comments, and not in the in the comment section on the live streams, if you guys are having trouble finding my streams. Otherwise, I'm just going to leave it up for you guys for about 5 minutes, and then hit me with some questions, guys. Come on. Thank you, Aldos, for tuning in, man. Your set, by the way, last weekend on Magic Sound Radio was phenomenal, brother. That really, really was a lot of fun. Yeah, check out Omnisphere. Probably one of the coolest VSTs I've come across. It's huge, though. It's 50 gigs. So if you do plan on installing it on your computer, prepare to wait. I think the box set comes with 6 CDs or something like that. So it's definitely a huge monster. Well, guys, that's about wraps it up all for tonight. Thank you so much for tuning in. Just this right here. If you guys have any questions, comments, please leave them in the chat. I'll do my best to answer them after I get off here. Otherwise, this will be the first one of my production classes. I will be doing more. And thank you again for being a part of this. This is the start of beginning something epic. So that's all I have for now, guys. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Take care.